Stand up. Oh, you were standing. Okay. All right. So thank you. Oldest joke in history. And then the female influence on the board, which we desperately need. I'd ask Miss Dawn Altmans, our treasurer, if she would stand and be recognized. Without her, there would only be 3 men on the board for a women's center ministry. So we do have an opportunity over COVID time, 2 years. We had some people who retired their positions, their terms came up, and so we do have some opportunities for just the right persons. If you have interest and have a calling on your heart, we'd love to speak to you about that, tell you what that process looks like. I now want to introduce you to some people who are far more important than the board. Far more important than the board. They are the front line for this ministry. The front line. They're the soldiers. They're on the ground. So I want to introduce them to you. So our office manager, Miss Ramona Hernandez. Thank you, Ramona. Next, our business manager, she handles your money, which y'all faithfully are going to give us tonight, more than you've ever given before. That was subtle. Did I say that out loud? She handles the money. She makes sure we're being very good stewards. We stretch every penny, I promise you. I promise you. You have my word. We stretch every penny that comes in this ministry for the glory of God and His kingdom. Our business manager, financier extraordinaire, Kathy Geddes. Next, I present to you our Client Services Director. She served on the board for, I believe, 6 years, and then she went in to do a little troubleshooting, create some curriculums, and do some things in the center. She has a very unique perspective because she served on the board for that number of years. Now she served in the center. We don't have anyone like that. I don't believe we've ever had anyone like that. She is very well suited. She's awesome. She's my friend, as y'all are too, Mona. Y'all are my friends too. So, but she's my friend, and I'd like to introduce to you again our Client Service Director, Mrs. Kristen Eckenweiler. And last but not least, we have the great pleasure. If you've not had the pleasure, you can have so tonight. She's going to stand and stay afterwards and do autographs. She may do pedicures and manis if that's what it takes to get more money from you. But we had the opportunity. If y'all remember Randy, he was on the board when we came without an executive director. He stepped in. He had a tremendous amount of experience from serving on a board in Florida. Came on our board, did a great job filling that gap. Went a little longer than we thought, but then God provided. Isn't God something? God shows off. He's never late. He's always on time. But He provided someone, and He put her in the center first. He put her in the center first. She learned. She became a client advocate. Her passion for this ministry grew and grew and grew and bubbled over. And then what happened is she was bubbling over. She bubbled over on all these little ladies in the center, the staff, the ladies that were coming in as she retired from her career with BB&T, Truist now. God just put it on her heart. She applied for this job. The staff said, I don't know why you're interviewing anyone else because we're going to leave if you don't hire. I don't know if that's really cool with human resources, but they were right. They were right. So y'all were right. You were right. You heard me say it in front of 250 people. Mona, you were right. You were right. And so we hired her. She started, I believe, in the end of around Thanksgiving, and she's jumping in with both feet. She's awesome. She's awesome. And she is our executive director, and her name is Mrs. Valerie Hawley. And last, but certainly not least, we have another servant's heart with us who's exceptionally gifted, exceptionally intelligent, articulate, as you're going to see, a heart and passion for babies and these women and these men too. She's been volunteering as our medical director. She has made herself available. This woman's a career woman. Y'all know what doctors get paid, professors get paid. Let me tell you, she's been faithful to this ministry. And I've told you before, I'm going to tell you in front of these 250 people, I haven't seen everything you've ever done, but God's seen everything you've done. And God's pleased with you and your heart. And I pray he will give you the courage to continue in your capacity. And we love you. So I want to let you know. Our medical director, your medical director for Choices Women's Center, Dr. Susan Bain. Now, I told you not to clap until the very end. But you were so overwhelmed and overjoyed. Why wait to appreciate someone later if you can do it right now? I just want to tell you, the center does not exist without a multitude of mechanisms in place. It does not exist first and foremost without God. Because the natural man is very selfish and very stingy. It's all about me, me, me. When you give to any ministry, your churches and other worthwhile things, Christ-centered things, this ministry, that's outside of your natural body. That's your spirit leading you. It's not natural. Remember little kids? They say, it's mine. Give me, give me, give me. It's mine, it's mine, it's mine. So when you're giving, hopefully the Spirit is moving through you. So the ministry doesn't exist without our donor base. We thank you for that. The ministry doesn't exist without leadership. And we have a great board, looking to expand our board again. If you have interest in that, we'd love to talk to you. And then, of course, the staff that I just presented to you. When I tell you the staff, they are rock stars. They are rock stars. These people that work in our center could be working out in corporate America, a doctor. We have people, national speakers that work in our center. We can't pay them gobs and gobs of money. We can't pay them what they're worth. But let me tell you, it's never been as equipped as it is right now to meet these women where they are. We're going to hear more about that from Dr. Bain in a few minutes. But the collective applause for all of them, all the rock stars that lead this ministry, give them all a hand. Thank you.
When my partner and I first learned that we were pregnant, there was a rush of emotions. Terrified was definitely at the top of my list. So I did what every expecting mother does and nearly broke my ankle running to Google. Against every better piece of advice I'd received, I continued down the internet rabbit hole. Thank God I surfaced when I did, because I came across the local Choices Women's Center. The very next day, I found myself knocking on their doors, completely unaware of what I was walking into. The ladies in the center were so welcoming. The air was literally heavy with love and positive energy. After a full night of deep diving into all the possibilities of pregnancy, I had worked myself into a complete state of terror and anxiety. How could I ever become someone's mom? And what would I tell my parents and my partner's parents? I started wondering what my life would look like with such a huge responsibility when I was barely able to take care of myself. The feelings were completely overwhelming. Choices Women's Center took me by the hand and we began talking about all of my feelings and what my options were. I chose to have my son, and since I've had another, I've taken every class they've offered, and some of them twice. Making the decision to walk into this amazing place was one of the smartest choices I've ever made. I truly believe it has made me a stronger, better, and more empowered woman and mother. I am so grateful for all the love and blessings from the women at the center. To all of the great teachers and speakers, the sponsors, donors, and community support, thank you all, and God bless. I came to Choices Women's Center because I didn't know if I was going to keep the baby or not. I had a lot of drama in my life, and I thought I wouldn't be able to take care of her. My boyfriend and I are teenagers. He's still in school. I truly do believe God brought me to this center for a reason. I cling to Miss Kristen like I've known her for years. She treats me like a daughter, and I just love being around her. I love Choices Women's Center. They have blessed me and helped me in every way possible. I don't have a doubt in my mind that I will see these women in heaven with me because they are truly women of God. They have been there for me emotionally and physically, and they never gave up on me. They have prayed for me and given me gifts. They even made me feel like family, and I love every one of them. They also make my boyfriend feel loved and welcomed as well. Talking to the people at Choices Women's Center and having them encourage me and give me the help that I needed is why my little girl is here today, and I will forever be grateful for them.
Can you hear me now? For so many years, I've come to this banquet. I am Kristen Eckenweiler. My husband served on the board back in 2004 and 5 and 6, I think. We've been a part of this ministry. And for so many years, I would either meet the clients or hear their testimonies, and like you all have just heard them tonight, but tonight I hear them as people that I know. And I am moved because these women came to our center desperate, and some of them very scared. And I find that they are the real heroes. And one of them is here tonight. And while she doesn't want me to recognize her, she doesn't have a choice. Chelsea and her baby are here tonight, and they're right there. Chelsea, wave at everybody. Chelsea's the one who went on Google all night long. She knows better now. She knows better now. I did have the privilege of serving on the board for many years, and it was a privilege. But I have never been more honored than to have stepped into the role of staff, where I get to meet with these clients. And not only that, I get to work with volunteers. And volunteers are amazing people. They are just amazing people. I've never been more humbled in my life than to spend time with people who give of themselves in such a way. Many years ago, when Dr. Cecil Rhodes and his wife started this ministry, we started giving a Dr. Cecil Rhodes Volunteer of the Year award. But before we do that this evening, I just want to talk to you a little bit about my insights since stepping onto the staff. These women give of their time, all of them, and men. We have men that volunteer. Some take care of our parking lot. Some are willing to do anything that we ask. Some build walls, put up doors, kill bugs, change light bulbs. That's the boy stuff. Not really. But these women answer the telephones, and when you call Choices Women's Center, it's not just a hello. There's a desperate person at the other end of that phone. And these women they train long hours to do what they do for us at Choices Women's Center. Not only that, they enter into pain with people all the time. And sometimes it's the staff. And so they're amazing, lovely people. And before I recognize just one of them, I would like them all to stand. If you're a volunteer at Choices Women's Center, whether you fold envelopes, answer the phone, or meet with clients, or clean the parking lot, would you please stand? And can we please honor them all? You're here, stand up. Amongst our volunteers, we have what we call client advocates. It's exactly the way it sounds. They advocate for our clients. Our clients come in, some of them very scared, some of them full of shame and guilt, some of them very alone. Many times when we enter a room with a client as a client advocate, we're the only person that gets to hear her story. Never before was I aware of what a precious position that is. Because empathy pulls the seat up next to these women and enters their pain with them. And I am so honored to work with women who are willing to walk in those doors, because Jesus said, "Who will go?" And they said, "Send me." I'm so honored by that. These women humble me, and I get to talk to them every day. Sometimes they walk out of these rooms, and the weight of that woman's story is so heavy, I myself have broken down in tears. What we do really is frontline ministry. We show up for these women and hope that they will make a good choice with their pregnancies, but we show up for these women. Many times they have no one. It's a beautiful place to be. If you feel like the Lord would call you to such a ministry, I promise you, you will never be so blessed as to serve in such a way. And now I have the privilege and the honor of introducing our Volunteer of the Year, who is one of these women. I'm so humbled by her. I'm so glad to have become her friend. She epitomizes Jesus to me. She is lovely and always willing, and she has shared the gospel and Jesus many times, not only through just scripture, but through who she is. And she's amazing and beautiful and lovely, and we are humbled to have her. And I would like us all to do something new this year. I would like us all to stand when I call her name and applaud the Jesus that is in her, because that is who she will give the glory to, I assure you. Please help honor Jackie Fisher with me this evening. Jackie, would you please come up here? Your son-in-law was supposed to help you up those stairs. The bouncer right there. We love you. I love you. And we're so honored to have you. And so Jesus deserves all those applause.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. What a blessing. Thank you, I would just like to say that this is a total shock, and there's so many in this room that are volunteers that ought to be up on this stage, because they work hard and they give a lot of their time and effort and everything. But I do thank God for the privilege of being a part of this wonderful ministry, and it is. The lives that we see change is just totally unbelievable, and it's such a blessing and an honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm glad we got to surprise her. And she is right. It's very hard just to single anyone out. And we get to do that every year. Maybe next year we'll just line everybody up and pass out trophies. That's kind of like Upward, right? Everybody gets a trophy. We won't even go there. That's a whole other discussion. Many of you have heard the term parachurch ministry. A parachurch organization is defined, and I'll read that for you, as a Christian faith-based organization that works outside and across denominations to engage in social welfare and evangelism. Parachurch organizations seek to come alongside the church and specialize in things that individual churches may not be able to specialize in by themselves. Choices Women's Center strongly agrees that we have this relationship with the local church. It is a reciprocal one. As much as we need the churches to support us both prayerfully, financially, we need to keep our doors open in that way so that when they have someone in their church or their community that is facing an unplanned pregnancy, they can bring them to us. It's a beautiful relationship. We are going to extend an invitation to all of our pastors in the room to come to Choices Women's Center and take a tour with us and talk about that reciprocal relationship. The churches of this community are valiant, and they answer the call often when we send it out. So at this time, I'm going to ask all the pastors, all the church liaisons, and those are the people who bring back the information from the center to their churches, as well as youth pastors in the room, to stand so we may recognize you. And then please remain standing because you will receive an invitation to attend one of these luncheons that we've put together just for you. So will all my pastors in the room, youth pastors and church liaisons, please stand and let's give them a round of applause for helping to support this ministry all these years. Please remain standing. They're bringing you an invitation right now. So if you don't have one, you need to stand back up. And if you sit down too soon, we'll make you stand on the table. That'll be very uncomfortable. So mark the date, and I want to add that those invitations will be on the Choices Women's Center table in the lobby. So if your pastor is not here and you would like to stop and pick one up, or your youth pastor is not here, or your church liaison, please pick one up. We'll have 2 different dates where you'll be able to come to the center. We'll have lunch together, we'll pray together, we'll tour the facility. It'll be a beautiful time. So please mark your calendars and plan to attend that. Thank you so much. The other thing I would like to extend an invitation on that note, we had 2 things that happened at our center rather recently that I want to share with you. I love stories. One of them is that we started, and you'll hear a little bit more about this in just a second, a whole new program that we do for our clients. And in one of them, we invite area churches to bring a meal and introduce themselves and serve these women who are often never served, and to tell them about their church and invite them as an on-ramp outside of our center to a church family, to a church community. In one of those evenings, we had a church group come with a meal, and there was a lot of them, and it was a blessing, and they stood in the other room and they prayed. We had an abortion-minded client in the center at the time. They prayed, and when they left, they prayed in the parking lot. And she chose life. And we have never forgotten that. The Holy Spirit was there. And we knew it. And then another story, another time, we had a group of pastors that came to the center to serve us, but then they ended up walking from room to room and praying for every room. It was a beautiful time, one that I'll never forget. That day we had 3 abortion-minded clients that came, and 2 of them chose life. So we just believe that the Holy Spirit was present in there, and the power of prayer is stronger than anything we could ask of you this evening. And so we'd like to extend this invitation to the pastors in the room. If you ever get tired of being bothered by ministry, that's a joke. You're never supposed to get tired of ministry. If you ever get tired of looking at the 4 walls in your church, please come to Choices Women's Center. We're open Monday through Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 3, and on Thursdays from 1 to 7. We want to extend our conference room to you to come and work in our conference room. And while you're there, you'll know that we have clients, and you can pray for us. We want you to do that. So please take us up on that and come anytime we're open. And we don't care if y'all come at one time. All kinds of stuff will happen that day, y'all. That'll be amazing. So please take us up on that. And then now our fearless leader is going to join me up here. We're just going to stand together because there's power in numbers. Where is she? She was lurking in the shadows. That's a little creepy.
It's so funny. I can't hear my ear.
You can't hear
I
anything?
can't hear a word you're saying. I mean, I hear Charlie Brown in a female voice.
That looked like she mocked me like a sock puppet. That's how I feel right now. I feel like she called me a sock puppet. Okay. So let's put up a slide, and we're going to give you a little ministry update. I'm going to talk a little, then I'm going to let Valerie talk. Last year, in 2021, 59% of our clients came abortion-minded. That's actually up from years before. 59% came seeking an abortion. 41% of those coming to the center either came very scared, very alone, but still were going to choose life. So we were going to walk alongside of them. That's a lot of clients coming. What we are seeking to do is working. Next slide, please. What happens when a client comes to our center abortion-minded is we don't just throw up on the ultrasound table because that makes them uncomfortable. So we talk to them first, and that's what our client advocates do. That's frontline ministry right there. After the options counseling and then a chance to see the heartbeat on that ultrasound, 18% had negative pregnancy tests, and 58% of those 59%, over half of those women that were abortion determined, decide to keep their babies. That's a big deal. Now, while 24% shows unknown, I would like to clarify that as someone who does follow-up calls for the ministry, we don't know what their decision is. We might actually be able to count them as someone who has decided to keep their child. We don't know what their decision is. Often when they come to the center looking for an abortion, they associate our center with that feeling. And so if they decide to keep their babies, they don't come back to us. So we don't always know what their choice is. And so when I call them, I've called some and they've said, oh yeah, I'm 6 months pregnant and I'm in New Jersey now. And so they've kept their babies. We just don't know what's happening once they leave us. So that's where that 24% is. But the numbers are leaning in our favor across this country. And so we're very grateful for that. On the next slide, I want to tell you a little bit about the classes that have happened. When a client decides to choose life for her child, or if she came just really afraid and alone and needing someone to help her parent, we rewrote the entire program of which we offer these people. And those classes include parenting classes, Pregnancy 101 classes. In that Pregnancy 101 class, we actually have labor and delivery nurses that come in and teach them exactly what's going to happen to their bodies. It's kind of gross. But they do it all the time. They come in and talk about that gross stuff. And so we also have a money class, because the number one reason why a woman will choose abortion is because she can't afford to have that baby. And so we have beautiful people that come in and we do a money class that's been very well received. We're also offering Bible studies now, real basic Bible studies where we start out with who is Jesus and why is he different, and who is the Bible and why is it different. And we actually have seen lives changed, and we have volunteers that do all of that. In addition to all of that, we offer a one-on-one mentoring program called Thrive. We have rock star volunteers that do our Thrive program that walk one-on-one with these women who have no idea where their worth comes from. And we tell them, and we use tried and true truth. We use scripture, and we tell them who they are, and we change lives. We don't do anything. Jesus changes lives through that program. It's amazing. So amazing that many churches are now interested in picking up that program because it's just been so beautiful. For the first time ever, we had our first Christmas party. The staff is very small. You can change the slide. We went kicking and screaming into this because it was a lot of work. But we reached out to the community, and many of you are in this room. And we got to walk through the 12 days of Christmas with these women. How many came? 19, 20, 52? She said 15. But that was just to the night one, right? We had the daytime one where we had people there too. We don't know how many people came. There were a lot.
I can tell you we filled that room.
It was full. In that picture, well, it's not showing up real well there because there's a big old white thing in front of it. But that was a picture taken that Jackie, I think, took, hiding in the back of the room, of the back of our girls. That room was full. Now, let me tell you what I saw, because that's me up there in white. When I looked out at that room, I looked at 90% of those women that came into our center for an abortion, either holding a baby or holding her belly. It was an amazing time, amazing. And I got to share with them the 12 days of Christmas, and that goes back to the persecuted church, like the real 12 days of Christmas and what each of them meant. And we shared the gospel with them that night, and while we did, we gave them a gift for every day of Christmas. We gave them diapers. We gave them gift cards to restaurants, to Walmart, to grocery stores. I mean, the community showed up and showed off, and these women had no idea what had hit them because no one had ever showered them with such love. There was not a dry eye in that room that night, and let me tell you, we were the biggest babies. We were sobbing because it felt so good to give, and it felt so good to love on them and shower them and just award the fact that they chose life and they were walking in his love and in his faithfulness. It was a beautiful time. That's all I have for you tonight. Here's our fearless leader, Valerie Hawley. Am I supposed to stand here?
So I want to thank you all for being here, and I'm going to share a quick little funny story about our Thrive program. So in 2019, I came through the volunteer training in July, and they were finishing up on perfecting the Thrive program. And as we were going through training, Kristen said, "Do you think God's leading you to be a Thrive coach?" And at this point, she had shared all about the program, what the program was all about. And I looked at her and I said, "I don't need to be a Thrive coach. I need to go through Thrive because I need all those layers of my life folded back so I can see, why do I make the decisions I make today?" So guess what? I got to be the guinea pig for the Thrive program. I wasn't pregnant. But I am the mother of 3 beautiful girls, 2 of them sitting here at this table. My husband will be married 24 years next month. I have also a 5-year-old who is not here because she would be bouncing from table to table. She is the most energy of our family. And then God so graciously blessed me last May with a son-in-law. And so I thank them for their support. I thank them I couldn't be who I am without them. And I thank you guys for being here. We couldn't be who we are. We couldn't be fulfilling the call that God has given us if not for each and every one of you. And we have one very special donor in the house tonight that I would like to recognize. Weston, would you mind standing up, buddy? Weston is our youngest donor. I'm not exactly sure where Weston lives, and I don't know that he wants to share his address, but if you're driving around and you see Weston out with his lemonade stand, please stop and support him because little Weston is supporting this ministry. So I'm going to share a little bit about. So I came to Choices in 2019 as a volunteer. I had been at BB&T for many, many years, and a few years prior, I felt God nudging, and I didn't quite understand at that given moment what this nudge was, but I kept praying. I'm like, God, I feel this nudge, and I want to answer to whatever you would have me to do. And so a very dear friend of mine was working at Choices at the time, and we were at a Bible study one night, and she shared with us the need for advocates at the center. Well, as a full-time employee, my heart was leading here, but as a full-time employee, I'm not sure exactly what this looks like. So I filled out the application, I met with Randy, and I did the training in July. The enemy fought so hard from July to the next January. It took me from July doing training until January before I could ever walk into the room with the first client. Because they would schedule, I would show up, and then they would cancel. And I'd be like, okay, guys, I don't know. Is God really not calling me here? Like, what is happening? I would tell Randy, I'm like, Randy, I don't know what's going on, but little did I know that God was laying the path before me. And so I started meeting with clients in January of 2020. COVID hit, so it wasn't as busy. And I couldn't give as much time as I wanted to because I was a full-time employee. So I would go, when I could and give when I could. But my heart was there. My heart was there. And I apologize for being emotional, but when I just think about how God blessed me with allowing me to be a part of this ministry, and I think really me, God, you want to use me? And I won't ever forget, one afternoon I was leaving, and I called my daddy, and Daddy said, "What are you doing?" And I said, I'm leaving the pregnancy center. And he said, "Baby," he said, "how do you do it?" And because he knew how stressful my job was, and he knew how I just spent, I'm busy, and Daddy knew how busy I was. And he said, "Baby, how do you do it?" And I said, "Daddy," I said, "I can't explain it." I said, "But when I walk through the doors of that center, when I walk into the room with that lady who walks in and she's broken and she feels so hopeless and she feels like she has no choice. She feels like she has nobody there in her life to support her. She doesn't know how she's going to do this. And when I can just sit there and I can share a smile with her and I can just remind her that she has purpose, that baby has purpose." I said, "Daddy, it's what I enjoy doing." I said, and amongst all the stress that I have in my life, I'm going to give time to do what God's called me to do in this center. And so then 2020 went, and 2020, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I want to forget that year even happened, but for some reasons. So then we jump forward into 2021, and God closed the door of my career at BB&T. I chose to, God led me away. It wasn't that I had to leave amongst everything else that may be going on there at the time, but I knew that God was calling me in a different direction. Had no idea what that looked like. God confirmed through my husband, because obviously I can't give my notice and say I'm leaving my job without making sure that my husband is on board with this. And it was scary, but I walked away from my job in May of 2021, not knowing what I was going to do. But God gave me that summer with my kids, and my daughter had just gotten married, and then little did I know that the director's position was going to come available at Choices. And I'm like, "God, really? Like, is this you speaking? Like, am I supposed to be this person that applies for this job?" And so, and I'll be honest with you, I don't like calling it a job because it doesn't seem like a job to me. But so I started at Choices as the executive director in November, and I'm just so thankful to be a part of this ministry. Every morning, I can tell you, as I drive to the center, I find myself just thinking about what a blessing it is to be a part of this ministry. It just amazes me that God would want to use me in such a ministry as this. And with that being said, I don't know if you've paid attention to a couple of the pictures that are sitting about. There's two in the back, and there's some out in the lobby. But our theme for this year is for such a time as this. And you may be familiar. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that book of the Bible of Esther and that story. And for the sake of time, I could talk all night. So I'm not going to share that whole story. But Esther was a Jew, and she was chosen to be queen. And there was a plot to kill all of the Jews. And so Esther had the job of going to the king to be able to save her people. And Esther 4:14 says, "If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this?" And I would like to share with you tonight that you and I were placed here for such a time as this. The ladies and sometimes gentlemen that come through the doors at Choices Women's Center, they need us. They need to know that their time of crisis, there is hope, because they feel so hopeless. When you look into the eyes of some of these ladies, and you just, it's heartbreaking. They need to know that they're loved, and they need to know that there is support, because a lot of them, that's one of the things that we ask them, is what support do you have? And more women than not will say, I don't really have any support. And so we need to let them know that there is support for them. And just like Esther, we must go sometimes into very uncomfortable situations at Choices Women's Center to meet with these ladies and to meet them right where they are, to let them know that your circumstance seems so just unbelievable. You seem in the midst of crisis, but we're here for you. We're here to love on you and to just walk alongside you. Sometimes it's not comfortable. Sometimes it's, our advocates that go into those rooms, it's sometimes very hard. Esther could have said no to the calling of going to the king, but she knew that if she did, her people would die. You and I could say no to the call, but if we do, we're going to miss that opportunity to lead these broken women and men to Jesus. And through God, we can lead them to God, who will in turn talk to their hearts, speak to their hearts, soften their hearts, and they will choose life for their babies. That was one thing when I came to the center, the pregnancy center as a whole, we're all about, we want to protect these babies, but if we're not protecting and we're not reaching the mothers and the fathers, then that baby goes into that same situation that mom and dad came out of. And so we have the opportunity to reach all of them. Recently, we had a client who came to the center, and she had made her appointment online, and she thought she was going to Planned Parenthood. She came to our doors thinking that she was going to Planned Parenthood. She had no idea how she had made the appointment to come to Choices Women's Center, but God. God knew. God sent her there. And just like you and I are here for such a time as this, those clients come to our door for such a time as this. They come to our doors to hear how precious they are. They come to our doors to see that no matter what their situation looks like, no matter what they're surrounded with outside, that they can come and they can feel loved, and they can know that they do have purpose and that their baby has purpose. That's just one of many stories of how these ladies will come and they'll tell us. It might not be on that first visit, but eventually, a lot of them will say, I don't know, but God sent me here. There's no way that I would have came here without God leading me here. I want to thank you all for your support of this ministry. It is very near and dear to me, very near and dear to all of you, because if not, you wouldn't be here. I thank you for our staff. I thank you for our board. I thank you for our volunteers. I thank you for every single one of you. I thank you for all of the churches in our community. I want to partner with them. My vision for the near future and going into this next year is that we can partner with all the churches in the community, because there's ladies everywhere. There's ladies they're in the midst of the crisis right now. There's ladies that have been through things in their past, and we want to support and love on them as well. And so I look forward to what God has planned for us and for you guys in the future. I thank you. I can't thank you enough for your support, for your love. I ask you that on any given day, if you think about us, please pray. Pray for our board, pray for our staff, pray for our volunteers, pray for our clients, for their families, because with without God, God makes all of this possible. And it's so amazing to me that we can all be a part of what God is doing in our center and the centers all across the United States. So I look forward to, like Mike said, I'm not good with feet, so I apologize. I'm not up for doing pedicures this evening, but I will be glad to do manicures if you have the equipment here. But I would love to be able to at least speak to each and every one of you if we didn't get to speak beforehand. I look forward to joining in with you guys in the future forever. Like, I plan on being a part of this until God calls me elsewhere. So thank you.
Letting go of every single dream, I lay each one down at your feet. Every moment of my wandering never changes what you see. I've tried to end this war, I confess. My hands are weary, I need your rest. Mighty warrior, king of the fight. No matter what I face, you're by my side. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. Truth is, you know what tomorrow brings. There's not a day ahead you have not seen. So in all things, be my life and breath. I want what you want, Lord, and nothing less. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. You are my strength and comfort. You are my steady hand. You are my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. Your ways are always higher. Your plans are always good. There's not a place where I'll go you've not already stood. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. I will trust in you.
I got to run to the potty, so that worked out just fine. Approximately 1 in 4 women in America have had an abortion, with an estimated 62 million abortions since the landmark Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision in 1973 that legalized abortion in our country. That means, at a minimum, 62 million women have experienced an unintended pregnancy and have been in the unimaginable position of believing that the best choice in front of them was to end the life of their very own child. I've been an obstetrician for 25 years, and I have yet to meet a single woman who was excited about making that choice. Now, I recognize as I begin this conversation with you tonight, there are likely some here who have been deeply touched by abortion, either directly or indirectly. My intention is not to cause harm, though there may be some pain in this topic. To you, know that in the words of Gregory Boyle, a Catholic priest, I stand in awe of what you carry, and I do not stand in judgment in how you carry it. I'm here tonight on behalf of Choices Women's Center, a medical ministry right here in Wilson that tries to emulate Jesus, God, a man who did not care as much about taking the right stand as he cared about standing in the right place, with those relegated to the margins, a place a woman with an unintended pregnancy often knows all too well. Yet amidst this place, I remain optimistic. Why? Because the oral arguments in the Dobbs Supreme Court case heard on December 1st, 2021, have been called by many the most open and honest oral arguments on abortion in this court's history. We don't know how the vote will go, but the fact that the justices are thoroughly discussing the hardest questions about this very difficult issue is very encouraging. The rhetoric around the abortion debate is so intense in our country that it has been referred to as America's second Civil War. We as a people across this great country of ours have sadly separated ourselves in 2 camps, pro-life and pro-choice, and we do not talk to each other very well. It is our hope at Choices that we can begin to recognize that both camps have so much more in common than we think. We can all be pro-care and love both the women and the men and their preborn children. Together, we can dare to imagine a way forward that transforms our Wilson community through the beauty, love, and wisdom of God. Now, this evening, I want to cover 3 areas to begin this transformation process. And my husband's going to bring the clicker that I forgot to bring up here so that I can go to the next slide. This is my husband, Art, of 34 years, who I adore. Thank you, honey. Trying here. So I am clicking it, y'all. Thank you. So during our time together tonight, we're going to examine the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization Supreme Court case. We need a foundation if we're going to move forward as a community. We're going to discuss the implications for Choices Women's Center and all of the Wilson community, and then explore the opportunities you have to play a role. Now, let me set the tone for how I want to do this using some words from Justice Clarence Thomas when he was talking about his relationship with other justices on the court. He said, "People often ask me, who do you agree with on the court?" To which he responded, "In life, there are people I don't like that I agree with, and people I like but don't agree with." So there's a lot of wisdom there. Let me say that again. There are people I don't like that I agree with, and people I don't like that I sometimes, wait, let me try that one more time. There are people I don't like that I agree with, and people I like that I don't agree with. He then gave a great example to support this when he shared the time when Justice Elena Kagan joined the court. He said, "She is a delight to work with. I like her." He also said this to her when she began her work on the court: "It is going to be a joy disagreeing with you for years to come." He went on to say that when people disagree, we make each other better. We make each other better by sharpening the arguments, making people respond, making people think, making the counter argument. We definitely don't make people better with insulting opinions or reactions or arguments directed against a person rather than a position. No, we engage the argument. When we hear an argument we disagree with, we have to think about it and figure out how are we going to respond. So my prayer for us tonight has been that we can first honestly engage the argument. And second, that together we can dare to see how Wilson can be transformed, how we approach unintended pregnancies, to make room to love and care for them both. So we are actually going to hold class tonight. Don't think of me as a keynote speaker. Think of me as an educator who really wants to challenge you to walk away and think about some of the things I say. Because I can guarantee you, you are not going to agree with everything I say, and that's okay. So let's begin by examining the facts of the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization Supreme Court case. Now, to accomplish this, let's look at the roadmap that brought this case before the Supreme Court. So step one. In 2018, the state of Mississippi legislation passed the Gestational Age Act. This act limits abortion after 15 weeks gestation to medical emergencies in cases of severe fetal disability. Step two, on March 19, 2018, then Governor Phil Bryant signed the bill into law. Step three, on the same day that the law took effect, one of the doctors at Jackson Women's Health Organization, the sole abortion clinic that remains open in the state of Mississippi, filed suit in federal court to block the law. Step four, both the district court and the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals heard the case and found the law unconstitutional, citing two cases, Roe v. Wade, or Roe, and Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania versus Casey, or Casey. So the state of Mississippi appealed to the Supreme Court. Now, here are a few facts about that process. Parties who are not satisfied with the decision of a lower court must petition the U.S. Supreme Court to hear their case. Now, the court usually is not under any obligation to hear a case, and it usually only does so if the case could have national significance, might harmonize conflicting decisions at the federal court level, or could impact the practice of lower courts. The Supreme Court is actually asked to review about 7,000 cases a year, and they choose about 100 to 150. And 4 of the 9 justices must vote to hear a case. So, step 5. On May 17, 2021, the Supreme Court did agree to hear the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization case. And step 6. The oral arguments were heard on December 1st, 2021. So let's talk more about what the oral arguments looked like that day, the format, who presented them, and who heard them. Now, the format of the oral argument is planned to take 70 minutes, and the majority of the time is actually spent with justices asking questions to the parties arguing the case. In the Dobbs case, the oral arguments took nearly 2 hours, 113 minutes. So needless to say, there were lots of questions. So who represented each of the parties? Mississippi Solicitor General Scott Stewart presented Mississippi's position, and their position was that the Mississippi Act was indeed constitutional and Roe v. Wade should be overturned. Litigation Director for the Center for Reproductive Rights, Julie Rickelman, represented Jackson Women's Health Organization, and she presented their position that the Mississippi Gestational Act was unconstitutional and Roe v. Wade should not be overturned. And then U.S. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelager argued the United States government's position. And because of our current administration's position, the U.S. government was in support of Jackson Women's Health Organization, stating that the Mississippi Gestational Act was unconstitutional and Roe v. Wade should not be overturned. So let's take a look at the makeup of the court so you will know who will be making this massive decision. Now, each of you has a handout that actually includes a picture with the names, so if you can find that at your plate. So, starting front row left, we have Justice Samuel Alito. Next is Justice Clarence Thomas, Chief Justice John Roberts, Justice Stephen Breyer, and Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Back row, left to right, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, Justice Elena Kagan, Justice Neil Gorsuch, and Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Now, to provide you with the opportunity to learn a bit more about each of these justices and their legal philosophy, I'm going to ask you a few questions. So, time for a class group project. All right, your table mates are your teammates. Each table has a whiteboard and a marker. The whiteboard is a white rectangle. The marker is in the brown envelope. So somebody grab that and be the writer. I'm going to ask a total of 4 questions. After I ask it, you have a few seconds to talk among yourselves. Try to see if you can figure out which justice I'm asking you about. And then I'll ask you to raise your board, see if you got the right answer. Now, before we start, put those phones away. No cheating. I know you're likely a competitive bunch as I look at my family, who I have not practiced on, so they don't know what questions I'm asking. All right, question number 1. Which justice recently announced he's retiring after 27 years on the bench? And if you watched President Biden's State of the Union address, he recognized him during that. Y'all are cocky. You think you got it, huh? All right, raise it if you think you have the answer. Lots of Breyers. That's exactly right. Chris, you got the wrong one over there. I saw it. Justice Breyer was appointed to the Supreme Court by President Clinton and has served 27 years. He is known for being the most pragmatic justice on the court. He opposes the originalism approach that demands a strict interpretation of the language of the Constitution and believes justices should follow what he is called framers' intent. Last week, President Joe Biden nominated Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to replace Justice Breyer. Judge Jackson is from the Washington, D.C. Federal Circuit and is the first African-American woman to be nominated to a seat on the bench. Question 2. Which justice has served the longest on the Supreme Court? Which justice has served the longest? All right, hold it up if you think you know. Oh, yeah. Oh, you guys are smart. You got it, Chris. Yes. Okay. Justice Clarence Thomas has been on the court for 31 years. He was appointed by President H.W. Bush. He is the most senior justice and has repeatedly called for the need to overturn Roe. He is considered the only justice who we know exactly how he will vote. Of note, Justice Samuel Alito, who has been on the court since 2006, was the only other justice on the bench in 1992 when the Pennsylvania Casey case was heard that challenged Roe 30 years ago. Judge Alito dissented or disagreed with the majority opinion, as did Justice Thomas. Even so, there's less certainty on how he will vote in the Dobbs case. Question 3. Who is the only mother on the court? Who is the only mother on the court? Oh, people are getting cocky. They're holding their sign up before I even ask. Oh, okay. ACB. Oh, okay. Justice Amy Coney Barrett. So Justice Amy Coney Barrett is not only the newest justice, having been appointed by President Donald J. Trump in 2020, she's the only mother on the court. She has 7 children. She didn't beat whoever over here won earlier, yeah. She has 1 child with Down syndrome and 2 adopted children from Haiti. The other 2 women on the court are Justice Sonia Sotomayor and Justice Elena Kagan. Justice Sonia Sotomayor was appointed to the Supreme Court in 2009 by President Barack Obama. She's now serving her 11th year on the court. She's the first Hispanic and 3rd woman on the court. As a lawyer, she had the reputation of being a bright and fearless prosecutor, and as a justice has the reputation of grilling lawyers to ensure the arguments prepared are well understood. Justice Elena Kagan is only the 4th woman in the court's history. She is the only justice appointed who actually had no prior judicial experience, though she had a remarkable career as an attorney, including serving as Solicitor General for the United States government. Last question. Which 2 justices, in addition to Amy Coney Barrett, were appointed by President Donald J. Trump? All right, hold them up. You spelled them good. Great. All right, so Justice Neil Gorsuch and Justice Brett Kavanaugh. So Justice Neil Gorsuch has served on the court since 2017. He holds both a law degree and a PhD in philosophy. Justice Gorsuch replaced Justice Antonin Scalia, who died unexpectedly in 2016. Like Justice Scalia, he holds a commitment to constitutional originalism. Now, Justice Brett Kavanaugh was also nominated by President Donald Trump in 2018, and he served for 3 years. He served on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, as well as the federal government. His nomination process was one of the most contentious in the history of the court. In the end, however, he was confirmed. Now, there's only 1 justice left, so let me share a little bit about Chief Justice John Roberts. Chief Justice Roberts has served on the court since 2006, when President George W. Bush nominated him as Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. In his tenure on the court, he's held true to his legal philosophy, in which he sees the role of the court as an umpire, meaning the role of the court is not to create rules, rather to interpret the rules made by legislatures. As Chief Justice, his primary functions are to preside over the court in its public sessions when the court is hearing arguments, and during its private conferences when it's discussing and deciding cases. So, did any table get 4 out of 4 right? Chris, you owe a lot of $20 bills. So now that you know the justices better, let's talk more about the specific oral arguments presented in the Dobbs case. So each of the three attorneys made brief opening statements, followed by questions from the bench. We're actually going to listen to the opening statements of the attorneys, taking about 5 minutes. I'll then summarize the key lines of questioning that followed. You will hear them in the order that they presented their cases on December 1st. Mississippi Solicitor General Scott Stewart went first, followed by about 30 minutes of questions to him, followed by Julie Rickelman on behalf of Jackson Women's Health, and then Elizabeth Prelager on behalf of the U.S. government. So if you'll go ahead and play that audio.
General Stewart.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court, Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey haunt our country. They have no basis in the Constitution. They have no home in our history or traditions. They've damaged the democratic process. They've poisoned the law. They've choked off compromise. For 50 years, they've kept this court at the center of a political battle that it can never resolve. And 50 years on, they stand alone. Nowhere else does this court recognize a right to end a human life. Consider this case. The Mississippi law here prohibits abortions after 15 weeks. The law includes robust exceptions for a woman's life and health. It leaves months to obtain an abortion. Yet the courts below struck the law down. It didn't matter that the law applies when an unborn child is undeniably human, when risks to women surge, and when the common abortion procedure is brutal. The lower courts held that because the law prohibits abortions before viability, it is unconstitutional no matter what. Roe and Casey's core holding, according to those courts, is that the people can protect an unborn girl's life when she just barely can survive outside the womb, but not any earlier when she needs a little more help. That is the world under Roe and Casey. That is not the world the Constitution promises. The Constitution places its trust in the people. On hard issue after hard issue, the people make this country work. Abortion is a hard issue. It demands the best from all of us, not a judgment by just a few of us. When an issue affects everyone, and when the Constitution does not take sides on it, it belongs to the people. Roe and Casey have failed, but the people, if given the chance, will succeed. This court should overrule Roe and Casey and uphold the state's law. I welcome the court's questions.
Ms. Rickelman.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court, Mississippi's ban on abortion 2 months before viability is flatly unconstitutional under decades of precedent. Mississippi asks of the court to dismantle this precedent and allow states to force women to remain pregnant and give birth against their will. The court should refuse to do so for at least 3 reasons. First, stare decisis presents an especially high bar here. In Casey, this court carefully examined and rejected every possible reason for overruling Roe, holding that a woman's right to end a pregnancy before viability was a rule of law and a component of liberty it could not renounce. The question then is not whether Roe should be overturned, but whether Casey was egregiously wrong to adhere to Roe's central holding. Second, Casey and Roe were correct. For a state to take control of a woman's body and demand that she go through pregnancy and childbirth with all the physical risks and life-altering consequences that brings is a fundamental deprivation of her liberty. Preserving a woman's right to make this decision until viability protects her liberty while logically balancing the other interests at stake. Third, eliminating or reducing the right to abortion will propel women backwards. 2 generations have now relied on this right, and 1 out of every 4 women makes the decision to end a pregnancy. Mississippi's ban would particularly hurt women with a major health or life change during the course of a pregnancy, poor women who are twice as likely to be delayed in accessing care, and young people or those in contraception who take longer to recognize a pregnancy. To avoid profound damage to women's liberty, equality, and the rule of law, the court should affirm.
General Prelager.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court.
For a half-century, this court has correctly recognized that the Constitution protects a woman's fundamental right to decide whether to end a pregnancy before viability. That guarantee that the state cannot force a woman to carry a pregnancy to term and give birth has engendered substantial individual and societal reliance. The real-world effects of overruling Roe and Casey would be severe and swift. Nearly half of the states already have or are expected to enact bans on abortion at all stages of pregnancy, many without exceptions for rape or incest. Women who are unable to travel hundreds of miles to gain access to legal abortion will be required to continue with their pregnancies and give birth, with profound effects on their bodies, their health, and the course of their lives. If this court renounces the liberty interest recognized in Roe and reaffirmed in Casey, it would be an unprecedented contraction of individual rights and a stark departure from principles of stare decisis. The court has never revoked a right that is so fundamental to so many Americans and so central to their ability to participate fully and equally in society. The court should not overrule this central component of women's liberty.
So now that you've heard the opening statements, let's talk about the key lines of questioning that came from the justices, starting with the doctrine of stare decisis. So the core issue of the Dobbs case involves this doctrine of stare decisis. Key takeaways about this doctrine include, first, it is a legal doctrine that obligates courts to follow historical cases when making a ruling in a similar case. It requires that cases follow the precedents of other similar cases in similar jurisdictions. And because the U.S. Supreme Court is the nation's highest court, all states rely on Supreme Court precedents, meaning they look to Supreme Court decisions when making decisions at the lower court level. The Dobbs case challenges two cases heard by the Supreme Court regarding the legalization of abortion, Roe and Casey. Thus, the Supreme Court must use the stare decisis doctrine to determine whether it will adhere to the prior cases or whether it should overrule these cases. Interestingly, the Supreme Court has reversed itself more than 230 times over its history. Perhaps the most famous case being the landmark 1952 Brown versus Board of Education case that finally invalidated the separate but equal doctrine and led to integration in our schools. Now, the next line of questioning that was present throughout the oral arguments revolved around what constitutional right are we talking about when a woman chooses an abortion? Roe in 1973 legalized abortion based on a right of privacy in the 14th Amendment, stating that the right of privacy is broad enough to encompass a woman's decision whether to have an abortion. Now, both pro-choice and pro-life legal scholars have had strong opinions against the use of the right of privacy as a basis for the legalization of abortion. It was obvious in the oral arguments that Justice Clarence Thomas, who you recall is the only person who has written an opinion saying that Roe should be overturned, his primary focus was this question. As he asked all three attorneys, is this a constitutional right to privacy, to bodily autonomy, to liberty, or to abortion? He also asked Solicitor General Stewart, what difference does it make in your analysis that abortion is the only constitutional right that involves taking a life? Stewart responded that it marks out the unbelievably profound ramifications of abortion jurisprudence. As I consider this case, it matters greatly that abortion involves the taking of a human life, and it's an important factor in why 93% of obstetricians in private practice and 75% in academic medicine do not perform abortions as part of their medical care. As obstetricians, we care for two patients, the woman and her fetus or preborn child. Both deserve great care, and that care begins with a commitment to the good of our patients. Now, that is not to say there are not times when a mother's life is at risk and we must induce early, and we know her baby is too young to survive. But that is a much different situation than the direct or intentional killing of a fetus or preborn child that occurs during an abortion. So another line of questioning relates to the timing of abortions and restrictions surrounding state laws. They involve something called viability and the undue burden standard. So to understand these, we need to briefly review Roe and Casey. So in Roe, back in 1973, a trimester framework was set up stating that during the first trimester, the decision on whether to abort or not should be left exclusively to the mother. Bless you. For the second trimester, the court ruled that the state could not regulate abortion except to protect the mother's health. And then during the last trimester, or the third trimester, after the fetus has reached viability or can survive outside the mother's womb, state laws were permitted to restrict and prohibit abortion except when an abortion was necessary to preserve the health of the mother. Now, this trimester framework stood as a national benchmark for abortion laws for 2 decades following Roe, until the 1992 case, Casey, challenged Roe. Now, Casey was a case that challenged a Pennsylvania law that instituted several regulations to having an abortion. In Casey, the court actually overturned the trimester framework established in Roe and replaced it with this viability standard, meaning it was unconstitutional to prevent an abortion before viability or when a fetus or preborn child could survive outside the womb. So that is about 24 weeks. So in the state of North Carolina, a woman can have an abortion for any reason up to 24 weeks. The court also in Casey adopted the undue burden standard, which means a state cannot make a particular law that's too burdensome or restrictive of one's rights. Thus, when state laws are passed, courts must determine if abortion regulations lead to undue burdens on a woman seeking that abortion. The next line of questioning relates to bodily autonomy, or the right to control one's own body. In the literature, this is one of the areas in which pro-life and pro-choice rhetoric is the loudest, as there are pro-choice feminists and pro-life feminists who both attempt to fight for equality for women, yet take 2 very different approaches. From the pro-choice feminist approach, with which you heard both Julie Rickleman and Elizabeth Praylager took in their opening statements, a woman choosing an abortion is exercising a basic right to do what she wishes with her body. If she does not want to be pregnant and give birth, she should not be compelled to do so. I fall more into the pro-life feminist approach, which is why I wear these pink glasses. I put them on first, if you were here 3 years ago in this very room as I was speaking at this banquet. I had gone to the Right to Life March in D.C., and the day after was the Women's March. I quickly noted that the pro-life approach to equal rights for women was not very visible at the Women's March. However, what was very visible was the color hot pink. Most marchers were wearing hot pink that day. So I came home and I traded my brown glasses for hot pink glasses. Some people know me now as Dr. Pink Glasses, representing the view that women should not have to destroy our very own children to be equal in this society. Now, related to this, the final line of questioning I want to discuss is reliance. Reliance of abortion dates back to Roe, but gained momentum in a statement made by Justice Anthony Kennedy in 1992 in the majority opinion of Casey, in which he stated this quote, "For 2 decades of economic and social developments, people have organized intimate relationships and made choices that define their views of themselves and their places in society, in reliance on the availability of abortion in the event that contraception should fail. The ability of women to participate equally in the economic and social life of the nation has been facilitated by their ability to control their reproductive lives. Now, if the tone of that quote is familiar to you or perhaps makes you feel uncomfortable, listen to that unease in yourself. Because there was a time in our country in which our economy was built on the reliance of slaves, and society had organized itself around the notion that we needed slavery and justified it because black people were not seen as equal, not deserving personhood. It took the court a long time, but finally they realized how egregiously wrong their ruling had been in the past. It's time that our court recognizes that Roe and Casey, too, were egregiously wrong, and that we can empower women in our society without the reliance of abortion. Accepting the necessity of abortion is accepting that pregnant women and mothers are unable to function as persons in our society. We can and we must do better. So let's talk about how. If you'll go to the next slide, please. Thanks. So let's move from our first agenda item to the last two, the implications for choices, the broader Wilson community, and the role you can all play. Now, as I said earlier, we don't know if Roe and Casey will be overturned. Many legal experts fully expect that the Mississippi law will be found constitutional, and this will lead to an increase in individual states' ability to pass laws that fit their state's values. So what are the challenges then for us as a choices community and Wilson community? Dr. Patrick Smith, a philosopher and theologian at Duke Divinity School, dares us to address challenges in the same way the Good Samaritan cared for the injured man on the Jericho Road. So let me read the parable of the Good Samaritan and see how we can apply that here. I'll be reading Luke chapter 10, verses 25 to 37. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. "Look after him," he said, "and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have." Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." Dr. Smith shares there are 3 things the Good Samaritan can teach us. First, we need the eyes and ears of the Good Samaritan. It's sobering when we remind ourselves that behind stark statistics related to abortion, there are very real people who walk through our doors at Choices. You heard about them from Kristen and Valerie. They do not want to end the life of their very own children, yet they feel they really have no other choice. They are often so alone and so scared. However, if we don't see or hear them, we're going to have a hard time being moved to love as Jesus did. Smith shares, proximity breeds empathy, distance breeds apathy. Powerful, huh? So as a church, as a community, how can we get closer so we can learn to see better? Next, Smith says we need the heart of the Samaritan to cultivate the kind of compassion that is informed by the gospel. The Samaritan saw and had compassion. He was moved by pity or a feeling of sorrow and compassion caused by the suffering and misfortune of another. Both the Levite and the priest passed him by, likely asking themselves the wrong question: what will happen to me if I stop and help? The Samaritan reversed the question and said, if I don't stop, what will happen to him? We need to ask ourselves that same question. But there's an even bigger question we have got to start asking, and this is where I think we have real opportunity for the two camps, pro-life and pro-choice, to come together as pro-care. Here's the question: why is there so much violence on the Jericho Road? Why are there so many unintended pregnancies? Why do so many women see abortion or ending the life of their very own child as really their best choice? Lastly, Smith reminds us we need the hands and feet of the Samaritan. We need concrete action. We need to interrupt the trajectory of the hardship of another. The Good Samaritan dedicated his time, his resources to help that injured man. That's what we need from each of you: your eyes to see, your heart to love, your hands and feet, concrete action. So what could that look like here in Wilson? It begins by living out our stated values. It begins with loving locally and loving those with unintended pregnancies. Now, why should caring for those with unintended pregnancies elicit concern and serve as a call to action for us as a church, for us as a community? Well, guidance to answer this question can be found actually in the church. So let's examine 4 key principles. The first is human dignity. Because each person is created in the image and likeness of God, each one of us has a transcendent dignity that can never be taken away, even if it's not always respected. Second is the common good. The principle of the common good reminds us that we are all responsible for each other. Everyone is our neighbor. We must work for social conditions that ensure that every person in every group in society is able to meet their needs and realize their potential. Next is solidarity. We are made in the likeness of God, who is a community of 3 persons in perfect relationship. God is community and made community. Human beings cannot survive without each other and can only grow and achieve our potential in relationship with each other. And finally is subsidiarity. The word comes from the Latin word subsidium. It means help or assistance. Subsidiarity starts locally, with the people or groups most directly affected having key decision-making. Individuals have greater agency or ability to act when actions occur locally, in the life of their family, their church, their community, a medical ministry like Choices. Yes, sometimes we need greater resources at the state and federal level, but responsibility for change starts at the grassroots, and we are the grassroots. So how do we prepare for a post-Roe Wilson? In the words of Roland Warren, the CEO and president of CareNet, we need to create a care infrastructure, an infrastructure in our community that can serve Wilson in an era where abortion is likely to become harder to get. Our work is moving into a brand new phase, and we need your support to accomplish that. At Choices, we're likelier to get busier. In Texas, where they have passed the Texas heartbeat law, and an abortion is not legal once a heartbeat is seen, their centers are seeing more and more clients, and they're seeing them earlier and earlier. So at Choices, what do we want to do? We know we're going to need to do ultrasounds earlier, and they are technically more difficult to perform. We will need a nurse trained to do ultrasounds, or doctors and ultrasonographers to do this. Currently, I'm a volunteer, and I am the only medical person or person with a medical background at the center. That's going to need to change to move forward. The changing landscape of drug-induced abortion in America brings many challenges. The FDA recently stopped the in-person visit requirement for women to receive drugs that can induce an abortion. So women who are considering abortions and want to take the drugs will often call about their options for that. And they also will often call because they really need an ultrasound before taking those drugs. Women who have already taken those medications often call centers to confirm that their abortion is complete. They also sometimes change their mind and want to know about the abortion reversal protocol that's available. So next is post-abortion recovery. We currently offer Surrender the Secret, an abortion recovery program. We know, however, the saying that the law is a great teacher, and abortion has been legal for 50 years. So the decision to have an abortion has often been seen as ethical, but ethical and legal are not the same. We know some women suffer significant psychological harm from their decision to have an abortion, and it often does not get spoken about for many years. We expect we will see more women seeking post-abortion recovery care. So with all those three things, we are going to need greater training, greater education, staffing, and volunteers. Now, our work at Choices is not limited to a building. That care infrastructure requires the greater Wilson community to come together as a network of partners with us. There are many ways this can happen. I only have time to focus on two. The first is our workplaces. Our workplaces matter. They matter because the most common reasons women choose to have abortions involve socioeconomic factors, including financial constraints and interference with education and work. This is what we see time and time again at Choices, and this is what the literature says. So given those barriers exist for so many women who choose abortion, how can we address workplace obstacles and make our workplaces family-friendly? So family-friendly policies are actually defined by UNICEF as those policies that help to balance and benefit both work and family life. They typically provide three types of essential resources: time, finances, and services at work. So I'm going to actually have you take just a couple minutes and talk with your teammates again. You're going to brainstorm on a few practical ways we can make Wilson's workplaces more family-friendly. So let me give you one example. Does your workplace offer both maternity and paternity leave for families after a baby is born? Just because the women give birth doesn't mean we should be the sole caregivers, right? Dads are really important in the lives of their children. So that's one example of a family-friendly workplace. So try to think of a couple other things, and then I'm going to share a list with you. So talk amongst your table for a minute. What would a family-friendly workplace look like to you? All right, I'm going to go ahead. I know you're talking, but I know the hour is getting later, so I want to wrap things up. So let's think about a couple of these. See if they're on your list. So first is time. Does your work, if it's possible, provide flexible scheduling? Working from home if possible, flexible hours. If COVID taught us nothing else, it should have taught us we can work from a lot of different creative spots. Finances. If you own a business or have a say in the finances of a business, do you provide fair and livable wages to your employees? Do you provide equal pay for equal work, regardless of whether it's a man or a woman? Do you support strict anti-discrimination laws and hiring practices? Do you support pregnancy leave for both parents? And in services, do you have a place for a woman to breastfeed or support her when she spends 20 minutes doing it? Do you have a child care at your workplace or benefits related to child care? Lots of things that we could do that those are barriers the women tell us why they're choosing abortion that we could have an impact with. So my last suggestion, and this is from Roland Warren, about how to have a care infrastructure, is knowing the role of the church and how important the church is, how much the church matters. Roland reminds us that pregnancy centers like Choices are designed to assist women from the time of pregnancy until about the first year of life, and are not designed to provide 18 years of missing support. The first goal is for the family, particularly husbands and fathers, to learn to step into their role. But when that doesn't happen, others must. The church must. He says that the church is structurally capable of providing women and men with the entirety of the support they need. CareNet has partnered with Dr. Tony Evans to develop a ministry resource designed to equip small groups to be trained to come alongside women and men. These first responders, as he calls them, are equipped to offer compassion, hope, discipleship, and concrete help. They are trained to link to Choices Women's Center and other sources in the community to ensure those considering abortion get the help they need to choose life. We at Choices dare to imagine a day in which we have a client who walks through our door, shares her need, and we can pick up the phone and have a list of first responders all across our churches in this community, ready to partner with her on this journey. So as I close, I'm reminded of what I see in the news where cities are designating themselves as pro-life or pro-choice sanctuary cities. Starting tonight, Wilson can become the first pro-care city in this country that says we will love locally. Families with an unintended pregnancy will be cared with no shame and no judgment. On our Jericho Road, we will do as the Good Samaritan did and ask the right question: what will happen if we do not stop and help? Many of you are already traveling on the Jericho Road with us. On behalf of everyone at Choices and the women we serve, I want to thank you for providing the financial resources we need to do this work. We don't charge our families, and that is an essential factor in why they choose to walk through our front door. A post-Roe Wilson is quickly coming. The Jericho Road is getting more crowded, and we are going to need greater support than ever before. So tonight we've talked about the many ways in which you can impact the lives of families with unintended pregnancies. As you may have already noticed, there is a card at your seat. It is our hope, as I end my talk and over the next few minutes, that you will consider two things: financially partnering with our medical ministry by making a gift tonight, and becoming a monthly donor to the center. Second, we ask you to consider learning more about how you and your church can become trained to be first responders using the Making Life Disciples resource. If your pastor is here, they have already gotten that invitation to the pastor's luncheon, and we'll learn more about that. If your pastor's not here, on the back of the card there are several lines. You can write in your name, your church, and we will get back with you. If you have questions, we have staff and board members available to assist you after we're finished. So let me tell you, you have been a great class tonight. I look forward to the next time we can get together, and Godspeed to you and your families.
All I have is now, to be faithful, to be holy, and to shine, lighting up the darkness right now. I really have no choice but to voice the truth to the nations, the generation